For more insight on what this all means for the veterans at home and for those stuck in Kabul, let's turn to Republican Congressman from Florida, Brian Mast. He holds a Bronze Star Medal, an Army Commendation Medal for Valor, a Purple Heart Medal, and the Defense Meritorious Service Medal for his service in Afghanistan, just to name a few. Congressman, thank you for taking time. I wish we had a better reason to have you on today, but we don't. And as you heard from Admiral Kirby at that press briefing at the Pentagon, the situation is fluid and dynamic. Major General Hank Taylor not wanting to go into the threat assessment, yet it's stunningly 24 hours after the president stood at the podium at the White House and simply said that there was no indication Americans were having a problem getting to the airport. What is the disconnect, and what do you perceive to be the situation really on the ground there in Kabul?
Yeah, let me give you 2 points on threat assessment right now. Number one, yesterday, you heard President Biden say any interruption would be met with a swift response. What would he call the Taliban surrounding the airport? That is the definition of an interruption. He is giving no response to that. He is essentially a lamb trying to lead a military of lions, and it's what is putting our service members and our American allies and our Americans there on the ground in danger. It's what created this entire situation. Let's be specific about what the threat really is. We saw images today of Taliban wearing U.S. military uniforms, night vision optics, other pieces of equipment. The president said specifically they have the most sophisticated equipment. So ask this question as one simple question. How many Raytheon-built man-portable air defense systems, that is to say, shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles, did they get their hands on when they took over the most advanced military weaponry, when the Taliban took that over? Understanding that we are now trying to fly out 10 to 15 to 50,000 individuals on aircraft. That is an example of just how dangerous this situation is and the kind of weaponry that they got their hands on.
Congressman, when you talk about your concerns, we also heard the president saying that there was no al-Qaeda left in Afghanistan. And of course, the Pentagon walking that back, saying there is an al-Qaeda presence. What do you believe to be the situation?
There's no questions that there's a presence of al-Qaeda, there's a presence of Taliban, there's a presence of Iran on the ground there, of any entity that can go out there and find a way to disrupt and hurt Americans. Every single minute that the clock ticks, those entities are taking inventory of what they got their hands on, of how they can use that, of where they can use that to disrupt and kill Americans and their allies. That is the fact. The president's press conference yesterday was probably one of the easiest that he ever gave, because his people that briefed him probably said, listen, just think of everything going on in Afghanistan and around the world and just say the opposite, because that's literally what he did. He just said the opposite of what the reality on the ground was and what the truth is.
Congressman, the president saying that no American will be left behind, although a little unclear how strong that commitment is to our Afghan allies, like interpreters that you worked with, a gentleman named Tom. I asked you, how important is it that we keep this commitment, and what is the latest situation with the interpreter that you became so close to?
For us as service members that stand shoulder to shoulder with one another, and our brothers in arms that maybe wore a different uniform, there's no more serious commitment that we make to one another than this. We don't leave our men behind. And the president never learned that. He is not respecting that. And he is tarnishing the reputation of all of us that put on that uniform and made that commitment to those that stood shoulder to shoulder with us, to include those that I served with.
Congressman, not that the president's going to take your advice, but this late with this much chaos, what can still be done and what should they be doing?
He needs to do what he said he would do in his press conference, was any interruption would be met with a swift response. I already said he's not doing that. He's not reacting to the perimeter around the airport of Taliban. He gave up the high ground. Americans are now in what we could say is day 9 of the Afghanistan hostage crisis, whereas just before this, the Taliban were our hostages within Afghanistan. We gave them the high ground. We need the high ground back. The most fortified airport in anywhere on earth, the Bagram airport, he gave that up. We should be flying flights in and out of the most fortified airport instead of giving that up. The most fortified embassy anywhere in the world, our embassy there, that was given up. He gave up the high ground. We need the high ground back in order to not be the captives, but make the Taliban the captives instead, the way it used to be.
Congressman, you gave both of your legs fighting in the defense of our country. There was a poll this week out by the AP saying that some 62% across political lines felt that the Afghanistan war wasn't worth fighting. What do you say? How do you answer that question?
I answered it to some people this morning, hundreds of patriots in Martin County, Florida, that went out and walked across a bridge just to show support for service members. And the exact thing that I said to them is this: what we do on the ground in combat, when you run across a field full of improvised explosive devices to get to one of your friends that was blown up, or when you race across an area that's being shot at with machine guns by the enemy, any of those things, you do them because your brothers and sisters to your left and right. That will never be taken away from us, and it always makes it worth it. I always tell people there's not one second in my life that I would trade 2 legs and a finger for any one of my friends.
Congressman Brian Mast, thank you for your service to our nation and for keeping us updated on the latest as you see the situation. Thank you very much. Anita?
All the best.